everyone, and welcome to the webinar on building a sustainable innovation culture in organizations. A quick introduction: I am Sachin Gupta, the co-founder and CEO at HackerEarth. HackerEarth is a 6-year-old company. We started in 2012. We have enterprise products in the space of talent management and innovation management. So we essentially help companies in building a culture of innovation, fast-pacing their innovation efforts through leveraging crowdsourcing. Essentially, companies can run both internal as well as external campaigns through which they can crowdsource ideas, proof of concepts, quickly build prototypes, and essentially, go faster to the market, build new innovative products as part of by using the product. So today we have our speaker, Mr. Swapnil Deshpande. A quick introduction about Mr. Swapnil. Mr. Swapnil is an industry veteran with more than 17 years of experience. He is currently leading the innovation and incubation team at ThoughtWorks. So in his past 17 years, he's had an experience of 2 years where he was an entrepreneur and a founder of a technology startup. Swapnil currently has a diverse experience in strategy, innovation, product visioning and development, project management and program management, as well as operations management. So you can understand, right? Over 17 years, he's worn many hats. He's touched upon various aspects of business. And I think that kind of holistic experience puts him in a very nice position to be leading innovation efforts at an organization like ThoughtWorks. Currently, he works with stakeholders across 13 countries to drive the agenda of innovation within the organization. So that's a very quick introduction to Swapnil. Welcome on the webinar, Swapnil. Before I hand over the controls to you for the presentation, I would like to give a quick flow of how the webinar will be structured today. We'll have Mr. Swapnil talking about walking us through his presentation over the next 20 to 30 minutes. Then I'll be doing a Q&A session, and then we'll be opening up the questions to the audience. So folks listening out there, you can put out your questions as comments through the tool, and we will go through the questions one by one and try to address them as many as possible. So without further ado, I pass it over to Mr. Swapnil for his presentation.
Cool. Thank you, Sachin. It's great to be here, and it's great to be getting this opportunity to speak with all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. So today I'm going to talk about my views on building a sustainable innovation practices in the companies and share some of the learnings that I have had while implementing them in ThoughtWorks. A disclaimer here, I promise to keep this presentation as simple and free of jargons as possible because frankly, I myself don't get many of them. So to begin with, let me quickly talk about ThoughtWorks as an organization so that you can understand the scale and scope of innovation in an organization like ours. We are a global software consulting company and present in 40 cities or 40 offices across 14 countries. We have 5,500 plus people. So you see, being such a diverse and global company with so many talented people available globally, it kind of brings tons of opportunities and challenges alike to all of us in terms of thinking about innovation. So as a part of my role in ThoughtWorks, I had a great opportunity, and I've been here for more than 5 years now, traveled to so many places and meet so many talented thought workers across all our offices, and almost everywhere I found a lot of awesome people building new things that could potentially turn into great ideas. People were doing new things, building new things for their learning, for fun, and were very, very passionate in doing what they were doing. So I saw people spending evenings and in offices and weekends at home on building their ideas. However, across, when I was kind of moving across many offices, something else kind of stuck in my mind when I interacted with these people. So I found that they were all working in smaller groups and were quite isolated from each other across regions when they were working. So the question that puzzled me was that what can I as a person do to take the benefit of the passion these individuals are bringing to the organization, and how can I give them a bigger platform to play so that the ideas they are building can be real innovations, can build real world and business solving innovation. So then I thought how can I gather them together and align with the strategy of the organization so that collectively we're able to make a bigger impact and significantly drive the innovation efforts globally in a sustainable manner. So since then, I have been kind of exploring various approaches to find out what works, what doesn't work, and thought it would be great for me to sort of share my findings and learnings with you all. So with that context, let me talk about a bit of innovation and culture. So when I talk to people about innovation and ask them what do they mean by innovation, I hear a variety of answers such as innovation is improving something, innovation is creativity, innovation means change, or innovation is doing something new, or it's like it's experimenting with new things. So you see, people think of innovation in a lot of different contexts. So I personally would always want to define innovation as creating something new that generates tangible value for the intended audience. And that's how I would like to define innovation. Or in a simpler way, you can think of innovation as creating something new that either saves time or efforts or costs, or more importantly, opens up new market opportunities for companies and people alike. So here we need to focus on two words that you need to keep in mind. The words are new and tangible value. If it is not new and if it is not bringing tangible value, I would prefer to call it as no innovation. It's not an innovation for me. They would rather be improvements or experiments or simply creative ways of doing things. And I think most of the innovative companies that you can think of right now have been successful because they have been able to build innovation as a culture of the organization. Fair enough? Yeah. So let's quickly also get a context of what really an organization culture really means. So to me, culture is all about people. I would define the organizational culture as what we see around us, the way things happen, and how we communicate with each other, and the way decisions are made in the organization. You see, decisions are very important in the aspect of culture. So since it's all about people, it kind of comes from the beliefs and values of people who are part of the organization, and it's moderated and enabled by the processes, policies, tools, and the leadership of an organization. So let's kind of move forward, keep this in mind, the definition of innovation and culture, because we probably, while reflect on it for the rest of the discussion. So let's move forward to think about, both in the context of an enterprise or an organization. So what you see on the screen is a simple skeleton view of a typical organization. On the left-hand side, you see customers and you see companies exist to serve their clients and help clients with their business needs. Then you have business people inside the organization. You see the two boxes here, one is on the client and other is a simplified view of an organization. So you have business people in the organization, the ones who deal with clients and bring business. Then there are functional people who are enablers of the organization and own the processes like HR, finance, marketing. Then there would be an organizational strategic leadership. You see in the middle of the diagram that kind of defines the direction, strategy, and overall are in charge of pretty much everything that is happening in the organization. The IT team is also important. We call them tech ops in ThoughtWorks. They take care of all internal systems, infrastructure for the company, and finally, but probably most importantly, you see the aspect is about people. So you have teams, they work on project, tasks, and deliver things that gives value to the organization and clients. So if you keep this in mind, about 6 elements of the organizational in mind, and if you kind of look at them from the lens of innovation, what you would see is that clients always want innovations to be delivered to them continuously, right? At least I haven't come across any client, or for that matter anybody, who is happy getting the same service year on year at the same cost. They always demand innovation from their companies. The business people on the other side want to be able to deliver more and more value to clients repeatedly and in turn grow their business. The functional teams and leadership both want to create a culture of innovation, not only to be able to deliver better value to client, but also to be able to run their operations and functions innovatively, smoother, with less friction. IT team or tech ops want to be able to drive the innovation by creating platforms, tools, and relevant infrastructure for people to deliver and build innovations. And most importantly, the people, they're always curious, they always want to do things, they always want to build and deliver new innovations. And they want to learn new things and contribute back to the organization. So you see, either spoken or unspoken, there is always an intent within these elements of the organization to drive and build innovation. I have never come across anyone in organization, and you name kind of anybody from these elements, who you speak to, and if you go and ask them a question like, would you want to be innovative, more likely you will get an answer that yes, they want to be innovative. Rather, they would never say they do not want to be innovative. So moving on, let's kind of quickly understand the type of innovation I would like to call. So as you see in the diagram, there are two kind of arrows you would see. One is the blue one and other is the green one. So a lot of companies are great in building innovation for clients as a part of their paid engagement. The blue arrow there. However, struggle when they think about building a sustainable culture of innovation, which is the green arrow you see within them, that can fuel more innovation for clients. So if you see the context, right, if the green arrow becomes stronger and stronger, the blue arrow becomes stronger as we go. So just to bring the ThoughtWorks context back again, we are fantastic in delivering innovations between the boxes, which is like as a company, we delivering innovations to clients and help them think out of the box as a part of consulting or paid engagement. However, as I mentioned, when I moved across the region, I found a real opportunity to make the green cycle of innovation within the organization with a bit more strategic thinking, a bit more strategy oriented, and a globally connected to bring real the internal innovations to improve the life at work through innovations, which kind of improves the life at work for all of us, and in turn helps us deliver better to our clients. So I started talking to people globally across all these layers, if you call, with the thought of building an ecosystem of innovation within ThoughtWorks to encourage and start thinking about building a global community of innovators and understand a bit about the barriers and approaches for innovation that possibly would exist in building that ecosystem. So let's kind of move ahead to see what are some of the common barriers you see around yourself. I have experienced in companies I have worked, including ThoughtWorks. Not all of them, some of them. Um, so these are real barriers that kind of stop companies from building the culture of innovation. So first one, which is probably the most common that you would have found around yourself, is fear. Some common thoughts that drive people away from innovation are like, what will happen if I fail? I don't want to be seen as a failure. Or would I lose my job if I fail in things? And these thoughts kind of drive people away from thinking innovatively. Another aspect of fear, as I say, is fear of change. Since innovation as a concept is associated with change and newness and kind of lead into a lot of unknown areas for people, for teams, and for organizations, people naturally feel resistant towards innovation. The next one is about teams and people having a short-term thinking. I've seen quite a few teams or companies operating in the market for today. Right? You kind of think about today's market and not necessarily think about what the future can bring to them. It kind of limits one's thinking and leads only towards small improvements instead of really radically changing and disrupting their business model. The next one, and another pretty common barrier you would think, is what I call as pretend busy attitude uh, of teams and people. So I see a lot of teams kind of allowing themselves to be overloaded with tactical work and BAU work, or the work that they have been doing forever and keeping them busy. So since the people are busy, they think they're already adding value through putting efforts without thinking about the outcome of efforts, and allow and sort of keep innovation on the side and allow that to be waiting. So most common thing I hear from these people is like, okay, let me finish my project first, and then probably after I finish my project, I'll think about innovation. Or maybe something like, oh, I'm just too busy right now. I just to manage this delivery, and then I have no time to think about innovation. Probably you also would have heard this, in some of the discussions you have been part of. The famous Kodak example kind of explains the next barrier quite well, which is like, we know it all, have it covered, and why do we even need to innovate? So attitude of safety first and risk awareness is also a barrier for innovation. Last but still important is lack of diverse thinking or lack of diversity in teams. If everyone is too similar of each other and is not welcoming of different viewpoints or diverse viewpoints to be put forward, the impact of innovation can really be low. When you're not open to different ideas, when you're not open to conflicts within yourself, innovations don't really happen well. So just to recap, so far we kind of discussed about what innovation is, what culture really means. We saw the skeleton of typical enterprise or organization. We also discussed about the intent. Like you see, everybody is really intentful of delivering or wanting to bring innovations. And we also looked at some of the common barriers that stop teams and companies from being innovative. So let me kind of move on to talk a bit about the approaches of innovation that companies take and see what works and what does not work. And in our context, I want to also explain what has worked and what has kind of not worked. So you see there are a couple of approaches, right? So the first one is what I call as a top-down approach, which is like a leadership-driven approach. So think of it like one fine day, someone at C-level leadership just wakes up and says that, you know what, okay, I've realized that we have to be innovative, and let's be innovative from tomorrow. So what they do is they kind of go and set up a team for innovation and directs them to innovate. Like, hey, here is a team, go and innovate. So typically this kind of approach results into setting up R&D labs, center of excellences, innovation team. And what happens is they kind of become sole owners of innovation within the company. So while there are some of the significant benefits of this approach, which is like the team are highly aligned with the strategic direction of an organization, and innovations kind of keep getting delivered at a speed with the innovation that happens, and they come with some of the important potential issues as well. One of the biggest danger of this approach is the exclusion of majority of people from the process. So you see, if you're cornering innovation and saying that, hey, only these people are the one who are going to deliver innovation, you also are kind of encouraging the culture of it's not my job to innovate in the rest of the organization. And then people kind of think back and say that, okay, I'm not part of this process, or rather I would kind of give up participating into the process. So that's the kind of danger you have, and that also kinds of maybe resulting into missing out some of the most interesting and really impactful idea just because they are kind of coming from people who are not part of those innovation teams for the organization. The second approach is, what I would like to call as a bottom-up approach or a people-driven approach. So people and teams are in charge of this approach, and they drive the bulk of work and thinking around innovation in the organization. So while leadership is kind of either not actively engaged, or they're sort of reactive into seeing what people do. So this, if you have seen, results into intense, kind of engagement of people in terms of thinking about innovation. So typical things like hackathons, innovation weeks, typical workshops around innovation, which happens in a very short time span but very high intense model of working. Um, that can kind of result into highly motivated people, but only for a short period of time, and they can fizzle out if people sort of stop seeing the desired impact at the end of the innovation cycle. So again, if you leave everything into the hands of people, people would love to pick up their own ideas, and some of these ideas may or may not be relevant to the organization they operate into, or may kind of result into sort of a waste of effort, because a lot of people might be duplicating the work that they are doing. So if you think purely from the innovation perspective and getting something out quickly, both this effect, approaches can be effective there in their own ways. However, the problem comes when we think about a long-term and a sustainable way of delivering impact, which like both leadership and people are engaged in the process of building innovation. So considering the kind of company ThoughtWorks is and what kind of works for a global company like ours, both this approach in its in the purest format were kind of not suitable for us. So anything that we wanted to do, we wanted to really ensure that it's people oriented, because people are the biggest asset for ThoughtWorks. And at the same time, we wanted to stop waste and efforts being put into innovations, so that we kind of bring better value to the organization as a whole. So I thought of another approach which I would like to kind of introduce and talk to you, which is like a collaborative approach. So moving on, here is what I would like to talk a little more detailed about the approach, which kind of combines the best of both earlier approaches to deliver, in my opinion, a long-term and a sustainable impact of innovations inside the organizations. So this is kind of achieved through alignment with strategy, and consistently generating value, as well as making it more like a people-driven and democratic movement. So you see, this is a combination of both top-down and bottom-up approach, and take kind of both best of both worlds. So let me tell you how we have been implementing this approach, right? So as a part of this approach, what we have done is we have set up a team, what I call as incubator team, or we call it as an incubator team, or rather, it's a kind of incarnation of a rapid innovation team that has two missions, right? And listen carefully about these two missions. One is building targeted innovations where chances of impact are higher. And number two, being an evangelist or take an evangelization approach for the innovation and sort of work with people and work with rest of the organization to build sustainability. Right. So again, two approaches. One is to actually identify target opportunities and build innovations in that area, and second is be the evangelist, right, and help people onboard proactively into the process of innovation overall. So the role that I and my team play here is dual in nature, right? So one is again thinking of strategic alignment and be targeted in innovation, which is what kind of comes from the top-down approach, if you have heard. And second is be an evangelist and drive the thinking of innovation within the teams to cultivate the culture of experimentation. And we kind of get measured in both aspects. So you see in this model, the innovation discussions are grouped into two spheres of the world. So what you see on the top left side, which includes the business functions, strategic leadership that drive the organizational strategy, and IT team kind of intentionally works with them to deliver innovations in a consistent and rapid manner. So for the elements on the top left, which is the leadership, strategic leadership, business leadership, and functional leadership, the IT team and the incubator team is the one that drives and delivers innovation. So for them, the middle part is the one that delivers consistent innovations over a sustainable period of time. And with the teams on the right hand side, the people, our thought workers globally who really want to innovate and build things, the incubator team and the IT team act like a partner in their journey, a coach sometimes, an evangelist or motivator, and essentially a community driver to get more and more people aligned to think and deliver innovations by themselves and help in enabling a path for them. So you see, the sustainability aspect kind of comes from the people on the right hand side bottom, the teams and the people who are driving things. And the strategic alignment kind of comes from the top left corner of the organization you see on this diagram. So IT teams, in case of ThoughtWorks, we call ourselves TechOps. We see it's extremely well placed for leading the innovation efforts globally within ThoughtWorks. So we figured out that the combination of incubator and the rest of TechOps organization is important in the success of bringing everyone together. That is the top left corner and bottom right corner on one platform to be able to kind of start delivering innovations. So on the top left side, you see the strategic function and business leadership. I work with them to really understand and partner on understanding the direction where the company is going and kind of identify opportunities to deliver targeted innovations at a consistent basis to the team. And at the bottom right side, I and my team kind of act like an enabler by actively working across regions to identify, build, and cultivate communities of people who are then aligned with and kind of supplement them with necessary tools and processes and help them innovate themselves. So how do we bring that sustainability and keep enabling teams to deliver on themselves? So just to quickly recap, for sustainable innovation culture, there are two things which are important. One is how can we have strategic alignment and value creation into the innovation that are being delivered, and number two, how can we actually make it a democratic, people and community driven movement. So we need to think we need to link the thinking of top left corner with more and more people with the bottom right corner and enable them to be self-sustainable. Here, the success kind of becomes when more and more people join the innovation effort, and the middle team that you see, IT and incubators, sort of helps everyone to keep lowering the barrier of entry for them and have the experiences sort of built to kind of experience innovation for them. Now I want to kind of talk a bit detailed about how part of all this in terms of, you might have questions in terms of, all right, it sounds fine, kind of makes sense, but how do we do it, right? That is kind of bringing strategic alignment and cultivate more innovators globally. So moving forward, here is what I would position as the 4 important areas for sustainable innovation. Number 1, build targeted innovation efforts and take evangelist approach. Number 2, have a platform approach for building innovation and constantly lower the barrier of entry. Number three, leverage the passion that people show already in your organization wherever you see people, and kind of build an active partner network. And number four, build places to experiment or experience innovation or make people experience the innovation. So first two kind of aspects are linked with strategy, but that because that's where the kind of organizational thinking seeps into the innovation efforts, and the rest two, the second one kind of are the one which are driving people and getting more and more people on board into the entire process. And the platform approach kind of influences both. So here is what we have done in ThoughtWorks. So first focus area, like I mentioned to you earlier, was about the incubator team that I had and has been set up with a dual role, which is like building targeted innovations for the top left corner, and identifying innovations where chances of success are high, and coordinating them with our leadership and stakeholders. So we recently delivered our fourth innovation of the year, and that was co-delivered with a recruiting function. So essentially, the opportunity that we had was discussed and agreed with the functional business and strategic leadership. We agreed that hey, we want to build some innovation in the recruiting area, and then we kind of went flat out to deliver the product, which essentially creates a new way to gather candidate feedback for our recruitment process. And we kind of did in 8 weeks period. So you see targeted area to innovate in partnership with the people on the top left corner, and delivering ourselves is what we did, and we'll continue to do so just so that we have a consistency into bringing innovations out. Now moving on to the second focus area, that is making it easier for others to follow the lead or create their own innovation which can be ready to scale globally. Here also, let me kind of give you an example of the innovation that we built earlier in the year in IoT. So you see, ThoughtWorks, if you heard me talking earlier, it's we have 40 offices, 5,500 people across 14 countries. As a company, we are a heavy users of video conferencing, and all our meeting rooms are our primary source of communication globally with our peers and with our clients. So and we have been kind of seeing a lot of trends about people actively using these rooms, and rooms are normally busy in terms of using. So as people book the rooms, as people go around the meeting rooms to kind of find and have video conferencing, we also saw sort of a trend in terms of a lot of rooms which are booked but not sort of being utilized. So if you kind of take a look at our calendar, you might find rooms possibly all busy, but if you kind of walk around the office, you might see some rooms empty. So we thought, what is it we can do? Because as I say, video conferencing is a fundamental aspect of communication between thought workers, and we want to really kind of push up the optimal usage of all our rooms. So we thought of building a solution. We thought, why don't we sort of go ahead and build a solution which sort of looks at the occupancy of the rooms, and then sort of make that data available back to the people to see, saying that, hey, you know what, even if this room seems to be busy right now, but it's not occupied, so you might want to go and occupy the room or do what you want to do. So we started building an IoT platform. We got the hardware into all the rooms. We put sensors across more than 100 plus rooms globally into our offices, and we started capturing that data. So first thing that we did, we actually built a dashboard which sort of shows in every office what the rooms are available, and kind of four status, right? Booked and busy, booked but not busy, or booked but kind of not occupied, not occupied, and not booked, and sort of people who have just been sitting in the room without booking them. So we kind of started showing the data visibility back to people. So having that visibility made people really kind of take a notice, saying that, oh, I see this room available, I might just walk into the room and use it because I want to have a quick phone conversation. While doing that, we kind of kept thinking in terms of, all right, we had a use case, we built an innovation, it's kind of getting used by the people, but now if somebody else wants to build innovation, how can we make it easy for others to build on top of what we have done? So what we eventually did is, the IoT hardware that we put out across all our meeting rooms, we made the data real time available to rest of the ThoughtWorks through the APIs. So today, if somebody wants to build a new solution or new innovation through the occupancy data that we are making available through API, and maybe build some innovation saying that, all right, if the next room is available, just kind of message me. Could be an innovation that people want to build. So it becomes easy for them to use the APIs that we have built to the IoT platform. And if they're able to build some innovation on top of that, it automatically works across all 100 plus places where we have the hardware platform and Google platform sort of laid in. So if you see, what we essentially did was we not only delivered an innovation that kind of helps us improve life at work for thought workers, but at the same time we're also making it easy for people to build on top of what we have done through the technology platform and APIs that we have been building. So that's kind of what I mean by building a paved path in terms of the way we deliver innovation and creating opportunities for others to deliver the next innovation in an easier, better, and kind of a scalable manner. And this is sort of I mean by taking a platform approach for innovation. So moving on, let's kind of focus on the third and fourth elements of approach for collaborative approach, and let me kind of talk them together. Like I mentioned, we have 40 offices in 14 countries across ThoughtWorks, and we sort of went around some of these offices and identified about 9 of these offices and kind of what we call them as the showcase offices. So some of the offices like Sydney, Singapore, Xi'an, Pune, Manchester, New York, Porto Alegre, Quito, some of these offices and Coimbatore, we have identified as showcase offices. Right? And the showcase offices were positioned within ThoughtWorks as the playground places where innovations that are coming from the incubator team or the partner teams, the innovations will first get deployed, and people will experience that. So it means people are made aware, sensitized that okay, you will see new things around you, and please be open. Please be open in using them. Some things might break, some things may not work perfectly, but please also open to give the feedback to us in terms of what you like, what you don't like, and all. So again, to make it a moment of people, it was important to identify the active communities and encourage them to join the mission of building things together and align them to overall objective of building a sustainable culture of innovation, which is sort of aligned with the strategy. So thankfully, like I was moving through so many offices and we had so many thought workers already wanting to learn and we are building things in a corner, it wasn't very, very difficult for us to kind of identify those people who were wanting to do something. So, wanting to do something, sort of working in silos. So what we did is it kind of got them all together and aligned them to conversations in that, hey, rather than you doing working in a corner, why don't we all join hands together? So sort of our impact becomes bigger in terms of what you want to do. And we started becoming intentional about taking the collaborative approach since last 6 to 8 months. And we have been able to align, partner, or cultivate about 5 active communities today across 5 offices. In ThoughtWorks, we sort of includes more than 50 active people, building innovations which are not part of my team. So we already have an incubator team which is sort of dedicatedly building innovations. But apart from that, we also have managed to onboard about 50 people globally, which are not part of my team, but actively, working on building innovations as they are. And this number continues to grow as we speak. So they actively think about innovation themselves and are collaborating with local communities across those offices and with us in various stages of ideation, innovation, and scaling of ideas. So you see, people want to work on their ideas and kind of protective about what they want to work on. So pushing them to sort of work with someone else on someone else's idea can be demotivating. So it was important for me and my team to keep in mind the interest of people, the passion that they want to bring, and kind of help them identify the usable and strategy linked ideas that they can build upon, which helps them learn, help them do things in the area that they want to work in. By the same time, helps a larger organization in terms of creating use cases or simply improving the life at work for all of us. So balancing and working on building these 4 areas essentially has been the core aspect for us in terms of thinking about sustainability of the innovation within the organization. So let's move forward. Finally, I would like to also touch upon the model that we have been using for building rapid innovations. Again, it's a 4-step process: ideate, validate, innovate, and measure. In this model too, we kind of mixed elements of strategic alignment, people participation to drive home more and more impact of the work that is being done. So let me kind of talk about what we have done and how we implemented these 4 steps of innovation. So you see, a lot of people have ideas. Some people have great ideas but don't know what to do. Some people know what to do but don't have ideas. It was important for us to get as many people to gather as many ideas. So back in June and part of July, we went around our offices to conduct what we call as ideate with incubator, just to gather ideas from people. We conducted 2 hours workshop, brainstorming workshop across 7 countries to start gathering ideas. Just go on, ask people, hey, tell us what you see around yourself, tell us the ideas you have, tell the problems that you see around. And through this, we kind of managed to have more than 150 people globally to join this workshop and give us more than 180 ideas in various business, functional, client areas, in terms of things that they want to do or they want to see around themselves. So as a team, we then went through all the ideas one by one to expand and understand what they really mean from that idea, and then evaluated each idea through 5-parameter scale to rank them from kind of low to high on those ideas. So 5 parameters, quickly I want to talk about them, are commercial viability of an idea, usability, adaptability, technology strategy alignment, and the feasibility itself of an idea. So commercial viability was a quick evaluation that we had to do in terms of identifying the potential of commercialization of the idea. So some of the points were pondered during the conversation were like, okay, is this idea commercially viable? Can we sell it? Can we showcase the concept of idea to the clients? Is there a market available for the work that we are doing? Can the idea be included, aligned with one of our offerings to the clients? Or lastly, would we be able to influence or open up conversations with the clients if I build this idea? Next was about usability. So it was essentially about asking questions around simplicity and use of the innovation. So some of the questions that we asked ourselves were like, okay, is the idea usable for our people, guests, clients, or candidates? Is it simple or intuitive to use? And is it easier to in fact deploy across our offices? Next was about adaptation. So it was all about thinking how easy it is to get your first 100 users on board. And some of the questions we thought we would ask were like, okay, is it going to make people change their behavior? Because naturally people don't want to change their behavior, right? What is the potential of adaptation by users in our showcase offices? How fast the users will adopt and get on board, and how likely we are going to get our repeat users, which is also an important element. And the final couple of considerations during our evaluation were like around technology strategy alignment with regards to ThoughtWorks, what we do, and actual feasibility of an idea. So we kind of thought about the technology, the costs involved, the efforts needed to build the idea, and in fact, do we have a market for these ideas? So as a part of this validation phase, you see, we validated all these ideas on the parameters, and then we had a detailed conversation with the people on the top left corner you see in the diagram with the stakeholders, with a mix of strategic, functional, and business leadership to see what is that we want to do and what are the target opportunities we want to find and build innovations in. So building innovations was kind of an all-out effort, the next phase, where we kind of use the principles of entrepreneurship, high-speed decision-making, and co-creation. We built 4 targeted innovations during the year in the field of IoT, mobile, web, and have deployed successfully across our showcase offices. We also successfully helped onboard 2 innovations from our partner teams from Singapore and Quito, and kind of got them deployed into some of our offices. So here I want to take a minute because it's important stuff for us to understand the principles of the incubator team that we operate into. So there are 3 things I want to talk about. One is about entrepreneurship, one is about high-speed decision making, other is about the co-creation. So we cultivated purposefully the attitude of entrepreneurship within the incubator team. All right. So if you think the line between the technology and business are really blurring, I mean, there's no separation nowadays between technology and business, and tech is getting core of everything that we are doing everywhere. So it was important for us to encourage the technologists that we have in the incubator to really think and understand business. So for example, when we worked on the recruiting oriented innovation, we ensured that my team gathered a good understanding of overall recruiting process beyond the scope of work of everything that they wanted to deliver. So we kind of encourage people to go and understand the business and functional aspect of what is that they are delivering. The second principle I want to talk about is the high-speed decision making. It's something again we purposefully practiced. So this means we kind of deferred or strict no to some of these references like, okay, I'll get back to you, or let me go and find more information, or can I come back to you in a couple of days, or let me think. We sort of strictly stopped having those conversations. So all of our decisions we practiced were based on the information that was available at that point in time of conversation, rather than going back and delaying and finding as perfect information as possible. Of course, we got few decisions wrong, but what we also managed to do is revert those decisions in equal fast way. So overall, we found that high-speed decision making was better than high-quality decision making for the kind of work we were doing. The third was about building together and delivering for a bigger cost. So you see, again, giving an example of recruitment innovation that we did, we created a working team that had recruiters, global leaders, and incubators sitting together every day doing things, and so we kind of made the whole process of rather than incubator delivering for recruitment, we sort of made it like recruitment and incubator delivering for ThoughtWorks. So like, you see the co-creation aspect. So finally, moving on, measuring impact of innovation that we delivered, we kind of linked it back to the earlier evaluation to see what hypothesis we had for the idea, what, we identified as the way to measure the impact. And it was important for us to link the measurement criteria with the evaluation criteria so that we understand, are we really going in the right direction? So finally, to conclude the things, and this is the final slide. So you see, just to recap, you see everyone in the organization has an intent, right? You go and ask everybody, they want to be innovative, they want to drive innovations. However, they have not been successful because of various barriers. For bringing sustainability, there are two things which are important, which is like, can innovation be strategically linked, and can it consistently deliver value? And also, is it people oriented, and is it democratic in nature, and can it drive communities into being part of those innovations? So at ThoughtWorks, you see, we are trying to build the culture of innovation, internal innovation. Like I said, as a company, we have been fantastic in delivering innovations to clients. And I sort of kind of building an idea and opportunity of building the culture of internal innovations to the collaborative approach. So the success of incubator, you see, again, is two ways, right? Can we build strategic innovations with the people in top left corner, and can we cultivate the teams on the bottom right corner for them to be more self-sustainable in terms of delivering innovations for their own stakeholders? So again, as I said, this is being done through targeted opportunity identification. We are building a platform for innovation where innovations can be readily scaled, and we are actively cultivating the partner network globally, and we are sort of deploying everything on the showcase offices. So that sort of summarizes my thoughts about what it means and some of my learnings about building sustainable innovation and the approaches that we have been taking. Yeah, so kind of back to you, Sachin, in case you have any questions or things that you want to discuss. And by the way, here is my contact details. Anybody wants to offline heavy conversation, feel free to note down and reach out.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Swapnil, for the insightful presentation. I think you covered some very interesting points. What I particularly found quite interesting was the balance between a top-down and a bottoms-up approach. Because I agree, sometimes organizations where they go wrong is that they pick one of these, and just a single approach fails to kind of give you sustainable results over a period of time. So there has to be a healthy balance. So there were a couple of questions that I wanted to cover, and then we'll open it up to the audience, and I'll pick some questions from there. But just quickly to work through some of the questions that I had. One is around, you talked about a rapid innovation team that's responsible for working on some of these strategic problem statements that you've identified within the organization. So is there a particular mandate to the innovation teams? How do you ensure that this team does not become a bottleneck in terms of picking up a certain number of projects? Like, what I'm trying to understand is that when you start the program, in the beginning itself, you define, okay, these are the number of projects you want to pick up, and hence you staff accordingly, or do you identify projects on the go, and there can be some staffing issues, and how do you ensure that there is no bottleneck?
Cool. I think it's an important question, right? So like I mentioned, the way we are working essentially is identify target opportunities to work with functional teams so that we open up their minds for innovation. So like I mentioned, TechOps as a larger team, we already have strategic teams who are working on building functional products. right? So for example, recruiting team always had a recruiting system teams within TechOps who are delivering all the recruiting products so far. What was missing sort of is opening up the mind and thinking beyond the day-to-day or strategic work that was thinking so as to disrupt the way we are doing. So the job of my team is really open up the minds of stakeholders on the top left corner to think differently or accept innovation as a way to disrupt ourselves, and then help the strategic teams to be more innovative, right? So for example, my success is not only to deliver innovation in recruiting, but also how do I make the existing recruiting team more sustainable so that they can keep delivering innovations on recruitment while I may be moving into a different function like marketing or demand or finance or whatever in terms of delivering things. So like I said, you see two nature. One is about opening up minds of stakeholders, and second is sort of working with teams on the ground to help them on board onto the process of experimentation, and then take up the mandate of delivering them at a consistent basis.
Okay. And at what point do you decide to hand over whatever you've built onto the teams? So at till what level do you go, and when do you typically hand over?
Cool. So from the examples, I can talk about the 4 innovations that we have done. And again, I'll take a recruiting example. We build a recruiting product in 8 weeks with the recruiting team, and everybody is sort of knowing what we have been doing. They're part of it. Once it is gone live, we want to really understand the reaction from people. Is it making desired impact? Do we have to change anything? And over a couple of weeks or 3 weeks period of time, when all the stakeholders and the strategic team were on board looking at, all right, this is actually delivering us the impact that we are looking for. At that point, we got all the relevant people together on a discussion saying that, all right, the innovation is sort of delivered, it's out there, people are using it, and it's sort of kind of delivering the impact that we are looking to do. And at that point, we then start actually officially handing over that work to the strategic team, so that becomes then ownership of them. So every new innovation in that area, sort of then they are kind of picking up and delivering going forward.
Okay, so it's from conception to demonstrating impact. It's owned by the innovation team, and then that's when you hand it over. Makes
Correct.
sense. Makes sense. So you also spoke about incubator team working as an evangelist, right? Helping people grounds up to come up with ideas. And I think one of the things that you spoke about was an ideation workshop that you did. But are there other programs or other initiatives that you run within the organization purely from an evangelization perspective?
Absolutely, it's a super question again, because talk about 4 things that we are doing in the organization. I spoke about ideate with incubator. There's one more thing called as learning with incubator, right? So like we are getting experiences of delivering this high speed innovations and getting into so many conversations in the organization. We want to really create a platform for people to come together and learn from each other. So we actively drive what we call as learning with incubator, where we talk about technology, where we talk about our learnings, especially in tech area in terms of what we have been able to deliver. We recently conducted a learning from incubator in say, securing APIs on Kubernetes, right? Again, example that we had. Third thing that we do is essentially build with incubator, right? IoT becoming one of the areas where a lot of people are taking interest. So we want to start, or we kind of actively looking at starting a series of um, small experimentation workshops that we want to run online where teams can learn together, right? So sort of a online workshop where people come together, build something and learn from each other. We call it as build with incubator. Fourth one, which is a bit interesting, because we want to also learn from ecosystem, right? We want to learn from people beyond ThoughtWorks. So we have started a series called as Expanding Horizons. With incubator, we actually invite leaders from industry to come and talk to our teams, right? So that we keep opening up our minds in terms of what's happening out there in the world, because that input also can be important when we think from an innovation perspective. These are 4 programs we are actively looking at running.
Okay, and
I would
sorry,
like
go
to
ahead.
30-second talk about another interesting conversation I started today. It's not an official program, but it could be a spoiler for some of the people from ThoughtWorks who are on the call. We actively want to encourage talking about failures, right? And that's something that we are very interestingly, started talking today, saying that we have had failures. We have had failures in approaches, decisions, right? And we want to celebrate those failures. And for us to be able to celebrate those failures, we want to go out and talk to people and that, hey, I have failed, or I have this failed and I have this learning. So we are actively thinking about starting that as well.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. So have you hashed out the, or maybe we could leave the program details to a later conversation because that could be a session in itself. But some of quite interesting programs. I was curious to know all of this is managed by a central incubation team.
Um, so incubation team sort of thinks about all this, but we are not the only team. Like I mentioned, we are part of the overall TechOps in ThoughtWorks because that's the place where we see is the one which is joining both the bottom right corner with the top left corner. So so as a TechOps, I get a lot of help from my partner teams within TechOps, like the platforms teams and the labs teams and others, who sort of help and work together, and of course InfoSec team, where we kind of share responsibilities and spreading those programs.
Okay, okay. So one more question around the top left corner before I move on to the bottom right, and I know we are running top of the hour, so I'll keep it quick. So when the strategic leadership team is kind of identifying some of the core focus areas that the incubation team would work on, is it like a annual exercise where you get some of the leaders into a room and then you kind of present the state of the union today and then ask them to come up with problems, or is it more ongoing that different heads would identify some problems and come to you? So how does that happen? How structured is it?
um, it's not super structured right now because, again, as I said, we are going through this process ourselves, so it's not perfected. But again, giving an example, right? So we once we done the ideate with incubator across so many offices and got these ideas, and we are able to categorize, so that, hey, these are now recruiting idea, these are people idea, these are demand idea, these are marketing ideas, right? So we actually through the conversation with the strategic business and IT leadership, we kind of identified an area which is sort of ripe for innovation today rather than waiting for tomorrow, right? We found that recruiting, both from a stakeholder perspective, leadership perspective, was pretty enthusiastic, pretty aligned in terms of what they wanted to do and what we wanted to do. It was pretty easy decision for us to say, all right, we started recruiting, right? And as we started experimenting with recruiting, rest of the functional leadership also was pretty aligned. And now that we are looking at how do we prioritize and who do we give preference and all that at this point in time.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. Now moving on to the bottom right, where you spoke about allowing the people at large to just ideate, build proof of concepts. So couple of questions here. How do you help people in prioritizing or choosing their ideas? I understand there's a validation framework, but even before they go into a ideation stage, do you typically give them broader problem statements saying, hey, these are the areas in which the organization is looking for creative ideas, or you keep it open and let people come up with their own ideas?
Um, Another interesting question you asked, like I mentioned in my discussion earlier today, people are very passionate about what they want to do, right? And sometimes it can be demotivating if I go and say that, all right, leave what you're doing and do this, because again, it's coming from their passion. So people always want to do things that they are interested in doing. So two things we did here. One is, first of all, going out and identifying what interests people in what region. So like some region wanted to work on IoT, some wanted to work on something else. So really identify the passion that people carry in that region. Second thing is, once we had all these 180 ideas sort of evaluated and expanded with the user base, with the potential things that we are doing, etc., we took these ideas back to the same people, right? Saying that, all right, here are 180 ideas from all of you together, right? And now can we sit together and find out in the area of your interest, which of these usable idea might be useful, right? So if you think about IoT, we said, okay, in the IoT, you can possibly do something with meeting rooms, something with office, something with events, something with something else. Now let's figure out what interests you. And once we had those conversations and people had an inventory of 180 ideas in front of them, it was a matter of discussing and sort of helping them choose the idea that they wanted to do, and then sort of help them with coaching and usability aspects of it, and getting them on board in terms of the process.
Okay, and how did you do it across the entire thought work? So did you invite people to certain locations and then had this pool of 180 ideas? Like would that it would have been an operational challenge, right? Doing it across such a large organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I had started only 6 months ago, it would have been super operational challenge, and I probably wouldn't be here talking about it, right? So it was important for me to start thinking a lot earlier. In my previous role, I have been evangelizing a lot about the need of getting everybody together, in terms of a platform. I used to call it an ecosystem. I used to call it a platform. I used to call it a forum. In a lot of conversations. So what I did is, I kind of went around offices, not, I mean, of course, I traveled a lot, but at the same time, identified through regional contacts who are the people who are driving this thinking, having one-on-one conversations over video conferencing or, in-person discussions to see what is that drives people, right? What is the driving them? Once I understood what drives people, then really going all out into regions and sort of giving talks, giving presentations to entire office, calling for people to participate, and then kind of latch on to those early adopters and help them onboard quickly. Right? So once we identified those early adopters, we're like, okay, let me do some experiment with you. I don't mind spending a couple of hours with you to even know what's happening. And then if I am able to make them successful, then the next person sort of takes a notice and that, all right, I have seen something coming from my office. Let me at least go and figure out. And that sort of grows organically is what I found.
Okay, okay. So one last question, and then probably we'll open it up for the audience. You spoke about a very interesting concept of intrapreneurship. So you could talk a little bit more about that. What are the various aspects?
For me, two things for entrepreneurship. One is about, do you understand business? Do you know what works in your organization? Can you understand strategy? And number two is about getting things done, right? Can you do whatever it takes to get things done with the people that you have? Kind of our most important aspects of entrepreneurship for me, right? Like you see, the boundaries between business and technology are almost non-existent today. So people need to understand both, right? And entrepreneurs really understand both. They understand technology, they understand the impact technology can bring, they can actually work on strategy, they understand it, and also work with people to say go out and get things done.
Okay. Yeah, so when I was just going through the questions, so there's some, at this point, we don't have any specific questions. So while we wait for the questions to come in, I did want to cover this. So since we have time, I'll do that. Talking a little bit about ROI, how do you really measure the whole program? Like innovation is a very large scope, right? You're doing so many things. You're talking about evangelization, which is very soft, and then you have got your incubation labs, which is very tangible. So across both these segments, one is culture, the other is tangible output. How do you measure?
Yeah. Two things for me when I think about measuring, and especially in the context of what I'm doing. One is, are we as incubator team able to deliver innovations to our intended audience, which is the stakeholders, in a consistent manner? So, like I mentioned, there are 4 innovations that we have delivered. All 4 of them are live right now across our showcase office, and people are using it. Right. So, the more number of repeat users you get is sort of a success criteria for us. And again, like if I just put a context, I operate in the green zone. I don't operate in the blue, like between the boxes. I don't operate in that. Right. I operate in the green arrow. So for me, success is it improving life at work for our people, and are people using the things that we are doing? Are we getting a quantitative feedback from our people, and our stakeholders getting the intended value for which innovation was delivered? That's number one aspect. Number two aspect, which I mentioned about, how do I onboard the strategic teams to be more experimentation oriented? That's something recently I have really started opening up, pushing people to do that. But my real success will come maybe in X weeks time from now, and I don't know what that X week is, when the next recruiting innovation is going to be delivered by the existing recruiting strategic team, right, and not coming from incubator. So if I am able to turn that team into a engine of continuous innovation, then that sort of becomes a measure of success for me and my role. So I kind of keep challenging my team that our job is to make ourselves non-existent in 2 years, right? So that everyone else becomes like us.
Got it. Very, very interesting point of view. So we have one question from person David Foster. So he asks, how do you balance idea incubation and a call for ROI? And I find that question quite interesting. I would like to, add some color on top of it. That typically ideas requires patience, right? You talked about failure. My personal opinion is you can't get one great idea without going through probably 30 bad ideas or 30 average ideas, right? So you can't just manufacture great ideas out of thin air. So you have to be patient, you have to give time, and people will go wrong. While at the same time, when leadership is investing in you, there is a call for ROI, like what's my return on investment, and the time period could be long. So how do you balance these two things?
Correct. It's a very interesting question, and I'm kind of thinking about how do I apply in the context of my green zone where I operate, because ROI strictly is not what we are getting measured on. We are getting the impact that we create in the organization. So, couple of examples. So, as a company, they have invested into building this incubator team. So, the most expenses are going to be on the people that we have in the organization, right? Or people that we have in the incubator team. So that's the investment they have done in terms of monetary value, right? What they get in return is two things, right? One, we are getting innovations which are helping them open up new avenues, which are actually resulting into reducing the efforts or time, plus as well as getting quality data in terms of improving our overall process that we have of the organization. Again, take an example of recruiting. The innovation was delivered in the area of candidate feedback, right? How do we get a candidate feedback globally in a consistent way across multiple languages, where analysis happens on the back, and the recruiting team as a function globally are able to take tangible decisions in terms of improving the overall process, right? So if I look at what's the measure of success for them, if my recruiting function is able to identify areas of opportunity where they can improve the recruiting process through the data that we are gathering, that's how I measure success, right? And if they're able to identify that, that's kind of sort of pays up for myself in terms of the time that we have invested. The ROI would have come into picture if we have been building products that we are kind of sort of selling, or in the blue area. But here my job is to make others more productive, through innovations and disrupting the way we are doing. So that's how we are measuring impact. So not strictly in terms of monetary benefit.
So I would like to kind of wrap it up. Thanks a lot, Swapnil, for the time. Really enjoyed doing the session with you. Very insightful presentation. There are a lot of things that we could discuss, but we had to keep it to the scheduled time. Probably maybe another session next time on to discuss some of the other things that we couldn't cover.
Sure, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting. I hope people who attended found it useful.
Yeah, thanks, Swapnil.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, before you could log off, Swapnil. So just a quick announcement on the whole. So I wanted to kind of cap it off by talking a little bit about HackerEarth. Just a couple of lines. We discussed a lot about the ideation. We discussed about bottoms up innovation, allowing people to work on the projects. We also talked about incubation teams, picking up meaty projects, taking the strategic leadership vision and translating it to the larger audience. Most of the times, things like these, when they have to be run at scale across large organizations, require platforms and products that help you disseminate your message, that help you collect ideas from various stakeholders within the organization, that help you graduate ideas across various stages. And that's where a product like HackerEarth comes in. We help organizations in running ideation, crowdsourcing, innovation evangelization at scale. So if you're interested, happy to look at it. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for attending. We're signing off.